Meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 28 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the order reference of Tuesday, March 24, the committee is meeting on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. And I just want to point out on a technicality that when people are speaking in English, please use your English set at the bottom. If you're speaking in French, use French. It's easier for the translators and interpreters that way. With that, then I want to welcome the minister and the witnesses. I'll not go through the list of witnesses, but we do have with the minister witnesses from the Canada Revenue Agency, the Department of Finance, and the Department of Employment and Social Development. And Mr. Minister, we certainly welcome you. We know you got an opening statement, but I do want to say in beginning, thank you for the fourth report on the biweekly reports of parts 3, 8, and 18 of Bill C-13 related to the COVID-19 emergency response. We appreciate that, and I also want to say a special thank you to the people who prepare that report, the people that work in the back rooms that we never see, that do a lot of work for Canadians. I want to certainly, you can give them our thanks, that we appreciate what they're doing for Canadians and what they're doing in preparing reports for us at the Finance Committee. And certainly for Sean and I, we thank you for today's announcement as well, a welcome announcement on the fisheries side. With that, we welcome you, Minister. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the committee for their continuing work during these extremely challenging times. I also want to thank you for the invitation to have me speak today at the committee. As we all know, COVID-19 continues to pose significant risks to people's health, their way of life, and the economy as a whole.
Since early March, Canada's emergency response plan to address COVID-19 supports Canadians and Canadian businesses who are tackling this crisis, unprecedented crisis. This overall economic plan contributes to economic stability and protects jobs. There is a huge stimulus package that the Canadian government is making available to Canadians, over $150 billion, which will help to limit the ramifications of the crisis on our economy. This financial relief will help Canadians once we come out of this crisis as well.
Ours is one of the most comprehensive plans in the G7. We've rolled out measures for workers and businesses across all economic sectors, for employers of all sizes. We're helping students who are trying to build careers and parents trying to juggle the demands of the COVID crisis on their professional and family lives. We've worked with provinces, territories, and Indigenous leaders. We're continuing to make sure that no one is left behind. The Canada Emergency Response Benefit, which provides temporary income support to workers who've stopped working, is important. More than 7.8 million Canadians have applied for the CERB as of May the 10th. We know that the pandemic has brought extra costs into the lives of seniors too, and that they need some support as well. As one of our first measures, we announced a GST credit top-up that was delivered in April, provided financial support to low and modest income Canadians, including over 4 million seniors. Eligible seniors received an average of $375 for single seniors and $510 for senior couples. Cette semaine,
This week, the Prime Minister announced additional financial support for Canada's seniors. Canadians who received old age security will automatically receive a tax-free supplement of $300. Those who receive the guaranteed income supplement will receive additional support of $200 tax-free dollars. This will provide support for seniors, $6.7 million to those who qualify for the GIS and $2.2 million for those eligible for old age security. We've also invested in community support initiatives that help seniors, $9 million for Canada United Way, as well as for the delivery of groceries and drugs.
Announced an investment of $20 million in the New Horizons Seniors Program, which helps reduce isolation, provides social support for seniors. This support is now more critical than ever before. We've also announced virtual care and mental health tools for all Canadians through a new online portal called Wellness Together Canada. In addition to supporting individual Canadians, we've provided significant support to Canadian businesses since the beginning of the crisis. We've implemented support for businesses across Canada that aren't eligible for other support measures through the new Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. This new fund devotes nearly $962 million to help more businesses and organizations that are key to local economies, including rural economies. Last week, we announced an investment of more than $252 million to support farmers, food businesses, and food processors who make sure our grocery stores are stocked and are keeping Canadians fed. This complements our action in March to enable Farm Credit Canada to provide an additional $5 billion in lending to producers, agribusinesses, and food processors. The government also intends to propose an additional $200 million in borrowing capacity for the dairy sector in particular. This past Monday, we announced the expansion of the Business Credit Availability Program to mid-sized companies from across the economy with larger financing needs. In addition, we announced the Large Employer Emergency Financing Facility to provide bridge financing to Canada's largest employers to help them get through this pandemic. These businesses employ millions of Canadians, and we need them to stay strong. We'll protect workers by ensuring that companies that receive support through LEAF respect any and all collective bargaining agreements, including pensions. We'll protect taxpayers by putting in place strict limits on executive pay, share buybacks, and dividends. Nous voulons... just an instant.
Just a moment, if you will, while I switch channels.
Nous voulons nous assurer.
We want to ensure that this financial relief well and truly goes to the companies that contribute to Canada's economic well-being, that make major investments in Canada's prosperity. When we deem a company eligible, we assess its organizational structure and financing agreements globally, as well as its employment operations, tax operations, etc. These companies that receive financing will have to commit to adhering to a certain number of disclosure obligations and climate-related sustainability measures.
Companies will not be able to get this financing if they've been convicted of tax evasion. Le gouvernement a aussi annoncé.
The Government of Canada also announced additional temporary funding for low-income Canadians that the provinces and territories deemed crucial to fight COVID-19. All the provinces and territories have approved this, and they're also working on essential workers programs. The Government of Canada will earmark $3 billion for this wage hike.
Since the beginning of this crisis, we've been focused on providing Canadians and Canadian business with the support they need to get through this crisis. We'll do whatever it takes. We'll get through these challenging times together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that those remarks and that overview of where we're at. We'll start with the 6-minute round, and I'll just give you the speaking order of that round. We'll start with Mr. Polyev, Mr. Fragiskatis, Mr. St. Marie, Mr. Julian, and then in the second round, we'll be back to Polyev and then Zerowitz. So, Pierre, the floor is yours. Your mic's on, Pierre.
Is it possible, Minister, that our that Canada will lose its AAA debt rating this year? Yes or no?
Sorry, excuse me, am I unmuted? Yes.
Okay.
The economic challenge, obviously, that we're facing is significant, and the investments that we are making are significant. We believe that those are in the best interest of the economy and will keep our economy strong.
So is it possible that we'll lose our AAA rating?
Well, as I said, we're making significant investments to support the strength of our economy. The ratings agency look at the strength of the economy. We believe that making those investments will support a strong economy as we come out of this.
So for the last time, is it possible that we'll lose our AAA debt rating?
Well,
yes or no? Just a yes or no will do.
As you may know, I'm not the debt rating agency. So what I can tell you is that we are making investments to make sure our economy is strong. And that's the fundamental determinant of how successful we are as a country.
All right. So no answer to that question. Do you have an estimate for what the deficit will be this year?
We have been providing, as you know, reports through to this committee. And the report you received most recently is giving you a comprehensive understanding of the investments we're making. As we have information,
yes or no? Do you have a deficit update for us? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, is there an approach which is one?
Yes, answer the question. That's
just,
the right
just
approach.
Hold on, the minister.
Answer the question.
Minister, just hold on.
We'll not answer the question.
We'll not take away your time. Go ahead. What were you asking, Mr. Minister?
My question is whether you will actually enforce an approach where there's a question and then there's a response.
Yes, it'll have to be relatively the same time, the same as the speaker does in the House. You can answer how you so decide, and the member can question how he or she so decides. Has to be relatively the same time on the question and the answer according to the rules that the speaker has been applying in the House.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Poilievre.
All right, so the minister doesn't have an answer to that question either. Mr. Chair, yesterday the minister wrongly suggested that the Harper government had cut the Auditor General's budget. In fact, the previous Auditor General voluntarily reduced his budget as part of his efforts to help reduce the deficit in that time. He said he could meet all of his auditing requirements with the budget he had. By contrast, today's Auditor General has said the opposite, that he doesn't have enough money to do the work before him. Will the minister, yes or no, provide the Auditor General with the funds he has asked for so that his office and the office of his soon-to-be successor can properly audit all the spending of the Government of Canada? And again, a simple yes or no will do.
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, the response will be roughly the same amount of time as the question. In fact, what I identified yesterday was the actual spending on the Auditor General in the last full fiscal year in which the previous Harper government was in office. Which
just a yes or no.
85.
The minister's got the floor up here. Go ahead, Minister.
Which was $85.8 million. Versus the latest full year that we have reported out from the 2018-2019 year, which was $92.4 million. So really just trying to identify the fact that the spending that has been put forth for the Auditor General has increased. We certainly support the Auditor General and the important work that she's doing and will do for our country, and will continue to provide the appropriate level of support for that function.
So yes or no, will you give the Auditor General's office the funding it has requested, specifically requested before this committee in order to carry out his and soon to be her audits? Yes or no?
Well, again, Mr. Chair, the way the process works as it does for all things that we go through financially is we look at the requests and we look at the appropriate expenditures for each different function. We will continue to take that prudent approach, and as you can see, we have
no answer to that question. No answer to that question.
Over to you, Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you. I asked a very simple question. This is a government that's spending another $150 billion on top of its normal budget. We're probably going to have a $500 billion federal government this year. And the Auditor General has asked for $6 or $7 million extra dollars in order to properly scrutinize all this spending. This should be the easiest question you answer all day, Minister. Will you give our auditor the resources that he has said his office needs to do his job? Yes or no?
Over to you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've said, we will continue to fund Parliament appropriately. We will continue to respect the requests of all agents of Parliament and come forth with funding that we believe is appropriate based on the needs and their representations.
About a minute left in this round. Go ahead, Mr. Paliev.
Yes. How many cases of fraud have been detected by your government's officials that have been paid out in the form of emergency response checks? Just the number, please.
I think, as you know, Mr. Poilievre, we've provided you with information on all of the programs we've put out.
How many?
Clearly, what we've been trying to achieve is a program that can help the broadest number of Canadians possible.
Okay, that's nothing to do with my question. Okay, so my next question.
Hold on,
my
Pierre.
final...
This will be your final question, but I'll let the minister finish first. He was just not quite to your time. Go ahead, Minister. Finish up.
Yes, as I said, we are trying to get to the broadest number of Canadians, and we'll have an approach to audit, and people who are fraudulent will be dealt with in the strictest of fashions.
Thank you. Well, it's your government has told bureaucrats to send out checks even when they detect fraud. The CBC is reporting that prisoners are receiving the checks at their jailhouses. How many prisoners does your government believe it has sent $2,000 checks to so far?
Well, again, I will go back to our objectives here, which is to make sure that we are getting the support to the broadest number of Canadians impacted by COVID-19. And obviously, we're very encouraged that the programs are having such a significant impact on so many Canadians.
Just the number.
Okay, that's it. Mr. Fragascatis, 6-minute round. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. Minister, I want to ask you about municipalities. A few weeks ago, this committee heard from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which, as you know, has put forward a request to the federal government to receive in the neighborhood of at least that's what their letter said, at least $10 billion. What do you make of this ask? Wanted to get your thoughts on that. From my perspective, it's interesting that their advocacy has failed to mention at all, really, the provinces, which is interesting because obviously jurisdictionally, the provinces have a key role in this. Municipalities exist as creatures of the provinces, as we all know. So again, just wanted to get your thoughts on the ask and the provincial role, the possible provincial role, and need for that.
Well, thank you. I think what we're seeing across the country in many different sectors, whether it be in business sectors or in levels of government, really significant stress because so many people are impacted and so many things that we take as normal activities are impacted by the coronavirus challenge. So it is not a surprise that we're seeing some stresses at the municipal level. Obviously, our support of people has been critically important because that's important for the municipal level. Our support of businesses is supportive as well in terms of those businesses in municipalities. I do think that it's appropriate what you said in your remarks that municipalities do work with provinces. I think it's important for us to say that we expect for that continuing relationship to stay strong and for provinces to be the funders for municipalities. That said, we do know that we all need to work together in facing up to this challenge, and we are endeavoring to do that. When we get requests, we consider them carefully because that's appropriate at this challenging time. And this request, like all others, will be considering carefully, knowing, of course, that it's also critically important for the provinces to be stepping forward in that regard.
What do you make, Minister, of the argument that is sometimes raised, which suggests that the federal government ought to act and lead the way when it comes to providing emergency assistance relief to municipalities, because at least as the argument goes, the federal government has greater fiscal capacity than provinces. What are your thoughts on that sort of reasoning?
Well, I would start by saying it's pretty clear that the federal government has led the way. I mean, the federal investments on behalf of people and businesses have been extremely significant. You've seen the direct support now, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that's in excess of $150 billion. So there's very, very significant support from the federal government. And it is true that the federal government had a strong fiscal position going into this, and we remain capable of dealing with this challenge on behalf of Canadians. That said, I know that provinces also have the capacity to be an important part of this effort. We are seeing provinces recognize that. They're putting forward, in some cases, programs. So that is also important. So I think that the kinds of things we've done, which have been supporting provinces with things like the essential worker top-up or the support for commercial rent, both areas that are really provincial, has been important. The Bank of Canada supporting the issuance of debt from the provinces has been critically important for them in having access to capital. So we've provided significant support, and we'll need to continue to work together on the challenges we face. And we do need to consider different jurisdictions and levels of government as we move forward appropriately.
Thank you very much. With my last question, I wanted to ask you about the nature of this downturn, which is quite unique in the sense that it has primarily impacted, at least at this point, the service sector. Previous downturns mostly impacting the manufacturing and construction sector, and men who disproportionately have work in larger numbers in those sectors. This time it's the service sector, and hence, not exclusively, but hence women seem to be impacted. At least that's what the data is showing us. What does that imply in your mind as far as a recovery is concerned? What sorts of approaches is the federal government looking at to introduce? Any thoughts on what this all means, what the current data that we're seeing means from a recovery standpoint?
Well, I think it is an important question. I think we are seeing that this challenge is hitting different segments of the population differently. It's hitting low-income workers in many cases in a more difficult way than higher-income workers, because so many of those workers are losing hours, or the jobs that they were occupying are not actually going on during the course of the COVID-19 crisis. So that was why the emergency response benefit was so important, because we knew that there were 5.7 million Canadians not attached to an employer. They were going to be initially hit, and many of those workers have gone on the CERB. I think fundamentally, as part of the recovery, what we needed to do was protect those people, and then protect the companies through wage subsidies and credit, so that those companies are around to rehire and to expand afterwards. So really, it's emergency support people, provide a bridge for companies so that we can come out of this with the capacity for people to go back to their old jobs, I hope, or in some cases move to new jobs that will be there because we've supported businesses.
Okay, thank you both. Turning to Mr. St. Marie and then on to Mr. Julian. Gabriel, floor is yours.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Ministre, et merci de venir.
Yes, hello, Minister, and thanks for testifying before our committee. And I'd just like to say hello to all the officials that have joined us on this virtual meeting. Yesterday, the government announced a regional relief fund. Now, for the other programs announced to date, the government laid out the terms, but now in this case, the total amount was announced. For Quebec, it's $211,000. Now, does this rule of first come, first serve, will that be applying?
Mr. Minister.
Gabriel, pouvez-vous me dire le programme vous parlez?
Gabrielle, could you please tell me specifically which program it is you're talking about?
Canada.
I'm talking about Economic Development Canada's program that was announced yesterday by Minister Joly. It is the FERR in French, which is the Regional Relief Fund.
Notre approche.
Well, our approach was to have programs that would be tailored to companies such as the emergency business account for small businesses to the tune of $40,000 per company. Now, we know that there are some companies that aren't able to qualify for the benefit because for a certain number of reasons. But you're referring to another program, a program that will provide regional financial relief for companies that have ongoing financial difficulties. It's a unique program tailored to small businesses that are facing challenges that we hadn't considered earlier, but we will pursue our approach for small businesses when it comes to providing liquidity, and we hope that in the upcoming days we'll have more detail to provide you. Question. Thank you, Minister. But if you could just specify the $900,000, $211,000 for Quebec for this regional relief program. Should the companies that want to apply, should they hurry up? Because it seems like it'll be first come, first served. Is it in their interests to apply quickly? Response. Well, it's the regional development agencies that are helping to roll out and administer the program, and that is why there is an envelope of money for each regional development office. And there's a very clear way to apply for the financial relief. That said, we're going to roll out a slew of other approaches. This is one of our programs, but there's a slew of measures to help small and medium-sized businesses. Question. Now, the relief support program for Air Canada. What about clients whose flights have been cancelled? Will the Government of Canada step in there? Response. Well, we don't have any program that is for a specific company. There is a credit facility for major corporations and companies. They are able to apply for specific financial relief if they qualify. Now, under our approach, companies have to explain the plight that they find themselves in under the Large Employer Emergency Financing Facility. And, of course, the same ground rules will apply to all sectors. There'll be no specific tailored approaches to airlines, for example. Thank you very much, Minister. Question. For the past 2 months, the government is rolling out programs, making announcements, without really talking much about what's being done to enhance current programs. And your statement again today, your brief referred to new programs. I think that an economic update would be helpful, a guidebook, giving us a sense of what's happening economically speaking across all sectors. Now, on Tuesday, the Parliamentary Budget Officer testified before the committee, and he said that an economic update of that kind was urgent. Do you intend to table an economic update in the upcoming weeks, Minister? Response. We believe that transparency is crucial. And I know that you received a 30-page report ahead of today's meeting laying out our initiatives and measures, and we're going to endeavour to continue to be transparent. Obviously, this situation is very fluid and continues to evolve. It's very hard to make predictions. It's very hard to forecast. When things settle down, it'll be more possible to do so. But this is an emergency situation, and we're going to continue to be transparent. And when things do stabilise and level out, well, then we'll be able to do more. Thank you very much, Minister. That's okay, Wayne.
Good. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Then turning to Mr. Julian, and we will have time in the next round for two before the minister has to leave. We'll start with Mr. Polyev and Ms. Zerowitz. Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Morneau, for being here yet again. You've been very accessible throughout this crisis. And to you, as well as the families of the public servants who are here today, we hope that everyone in your household continues to be safe and healthy. I'm going to ask some questions, hope to have a concise answer. I'm going to start with the fact that we all know that families are struggling, that small businesses are struggling, and yet that the programs that the government has rolled out haven't provided the universal supports that many people were hoping for. And so many people can't access the CERB. Many small businesses can't access the wage subsidy or access the commercial rent relief. So there are conditions that limit those programs. That's why there is some concern with the LEAF, which is the new program that you've announced, that contradiction, because despite the fact that other countries have banned executive bonuses, stock buybacks, dividend payments, countries like the United Kingdom, because it's use of public funds. In Canada, the approach that you're taking is simply to cap those. So what are you capping in terms of executive bonuses? Is it capped at $1 million, capped at $2 million? And how much are you budgeting for this new program?
Well, thank you. And there were a number of statements there. So maybe I can start with the first premise. We've taken the view that what we need to do during the COVID-19 crisis is to make sure that we're helping the people and the businesses that are impacted by this crisis. And that's why our programs have been specifically directed toward those people. I think what can be seen in application is that our approach is having exactly the desired impact. And some examples you used, the emergency response benefit is a good one. There's now more than 7.5 million Canadians that have come onto this program. So we're seeing a very significant application. The emergency business account, we now are hitting 600,000 businesses. They're getting this $40,000 small business loan. So the broad support is there. It's specifically targeted to the businesses or individuals that need it. With respect to the direct question at the end on the large enterprise emergency financing facility, we see that that's quite important to help businesses that employ many Canadians to bridge their time, bridge through this time. So we've done that, but we've put conditions. And so I think what you'll see is our conditions are as strict or stricter than other countries. We are, in fact, not allowing share buybacks or dividends for companies that come forward on this. We are going to have limitations on executive compensation that I will be able to roll out as we work through those that will be as strict or stricter than other countries. Similarly, we've said that businesses need to protect workers through collective bargaining responsibilities and pensions. So we see these conditions as critically important. We see preserving our economy as critically important, and we think this will help.
I would disagree with your answer compared to what other countries are doing in best practices, but I'll move on to another issue. Other countries have actually limited the use of public funds to companies that use overseas tax havens. In the rollout that we've seen this week with the LEAF, you've said specifically it's only those companies convicted of tax evasion. And I'm tempted to ask very cheekily, how many companies involved in the Panama Papers, in the Paradise Papers, in the Isle of Man scam have actually been convicted of tax evasion? But we know the answer. It's absolutely zero. Over 90% of Canada's largest companies use overseas tax havens. Companies like Cargill that have been involved in the COVID-19 outbreak, the worst in the country. And so Cargill uses an overseas tax haven. Many of the companies in Paradise Papers and the Panama Papers use overseas tax havens. Can you confirm that if those companies like Cargill meet the other criteria, that despite this open practice of using overseas tax havens, that they will qualify for use of the LEAF?
Well, I think it's important to consider the aspects of this program that will guard against these challenges. You just pointed out one. Of course, companies that are convicted of tax evasion will not be eligible. But of course, we've also been working together internationally to make sure that the ability for companies to move money around, what's called base erosion and profit shifting, is more limited. So that's actually reducing the scope for people to do the things without actually causing themselves to run afoul of the laws. So that has actually been an important part of what we're doing. But also the condition in this new large enterprise facility will be that the money that goes is actually required to be used for the Canadian operations, the Canadian investments, and protecting Canadian workers. So it's actually, that's an explicit condition of what we're doing here. So we've guarded against this, Peter, in multiple ways. Obviously, the work we've been doing for years has been reducing the ability for firms to do this. We're limiting it to those firms that have not run afoul of the law, and we're also focusing the investments so they must be in Canada for Canadian investments and for Canadian employees. Fundamentally, what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that Canadian employment at these large organizations stays vibrant as we go through this challenging time.
Sorry, Peter, we are over time. Then turning to Mr. 5-minute round, Mr. Polyev, Ms. Zerowitz, and then we'll have to let the minister get on to other things. Mr. Polyev, the floor is yours.
Will there be an economic update or budget tabled before Canada Day? Yes or no?
I think we are, as I mentioned in French to Gabrielle, we are providing significant information to this committee, and as the situation gets more stable, we will be providing more.
Okay, so no answer to that. No answer to how many prisoners and fraudsters the government has knowingly given checks to. No answer to the size of the deficit. No answer to the size of the debt. No answer as to whether it will reach $1 trillion. No answer as to whether we will lose our AAA debt rating. No answer when I asked the dollar value of our assets, liabilities, or equity. Mr. Minister, do you have answers to these questions, or do you just believe that Canadians don't deserve to hear them?
Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what we recognize is important is that we make the kinds of investments to get us through this time period, and we do it while presenting to Canadians every step along the way exactly what we're doing so they can understand it.
Another non-answer.
Sorry, I believe
Pierre, just hold on, Mr. Minute. Hold on, you both. Mr. Polyev, the minister has, I'm not going to take time away from either one of you, but the minister was about halfway through his response time. He has the floor. Give him the opportunity to answer and things will go much smoother. Mr. Minister, you've got about 20 seconds to finish that answer.
Yes, well, as I was saying, we believe that it's really important for us to support Canadians during this time and to give a clear understanding of that support, including the costs of it. And as that situation is more stable, there will be more information that will be provided.
Thank you both. Go ahead.
He won't answer my questions. Maybe he'll answer Michael Cooper's questions. I'll cede my time to him now.
Mr. Cooper, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Minister. If in fact you clearly want Canadians to understand the costs of the programs that your government is putting in place, then why not provide a fiscal update?
Well, in fact, what we're doing is making sure that as we provide these supports, that we are providing an understanding of the program's costs, and as you know, updating.
Then why not provide a fiscal update?
Just can we give the minister time to respond? And Michael, if you can just slow down a little bit, you're coming through a little crackly for some reason. Minister, you got about 10 seconds, and then we'll go back to Mr. Cooper.
And we're providing on a regular basis updates on how these programs are moving forward. And it's a very fluid situation. We will provide more information.
No answer to that question. I'll move on to another area, and that is, Minister, we have criminals who are receiving CERB checks. Officials have said have turned a blind eye to fraudulent CERB applications, but meanwhile, small businesses are falling through the cracks. And this morning I spoke with a small business owner. He owns a salon, Care Beauty Spa and Salon in Edmonton. He has invested $200,000 in his business. Just before COVID, he was set to open. Now he's out of luck. He doesn't qualify for any of the programs. He doesn't qualify for the wage subsidy because he hasn't seen a revenue decline. He doesn't qualify for CEBA because he has no payroll, and he doesn't qualify for any of the BDC or EDC programs because he has no revenue. So what specifically is your government doing to address this situation and others like it, where small business owners who have done absolutely nothing wrong, have invested considerable amounts of money, but are now stuck and shut out and need desperately support and help? What are you doing to address this situation, which is not a new one?
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Minister.
Well, let me first of all say that we are very worried about people like the gentleman you're talking about. That's why we've been so focused on providing supports to businesses, not only for their employees but for their business going forward. So we are working to make sure that these programs are available as broadly as possible. Our emergency business account, which is providing $40,000 loans to businesses, has now been taken up by an enormous number of small businesses, about 600,000, representing about $23 billion. So we recognize there are still situations that are difficult. We're looking at how we can consider expanding that criteria to potentially capture businesses like the one that you're talking about. But we will not be able to capture every single challenge. That's the nature of this crisis. We're working hard to make sure, though, that the programs that we do have are having the broadest possible impact. And I will continue to focus on that, making adjustments as we go along so that we can support people like the one that you're identifying through measures that work, and thinking about for those that fall through the cracks, whether there's other ways that we can be supportive.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd end that round there. And last questioner for the minister has to leave. Ms. Zerowitz, the floor is yours. 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I just want to start off by saying, Minister, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your extraordinary leadership and your hard work. It has been a lot. We're into the end of our 9th week of our lockdown, and I know that there's been such a tremendous amount of work from you, from the team, and I just want to say a heartfelt thanks. We know you're all working hard, and for me, I'm really glad that we have an upcoming 3-day weekend. I think we all deserve a little bit of a break. Anyways, my first question is about the large employer emergency financing facility that was announced earlier this week. There were a number of conditions that were attached to it, and specifically, you had included environmental and climate commitment condition. If you could just explain why you felt it was important to add those conditions, and specifically why you felt that it was important to add the environmental and climate condition.
Well, thank you for that question. We, I think, as you know, have been focused on how we can make sure that our impact on climate change as a country is one that we take seriously. I've been working on this issue with my colleagues. We had a committee that did some work on sustainable finance a little more than a year ago that gave some recommendations on how large businesses in particular could represent their climate impact in their financial disclosures and talk about how climate change could impact their businesses. We see this as an important thing for businesses to consider. Many firms have moved forward in this regard, which is quite encouraging, including firms in all different sectors of the economy. So we saw that as something important for us to recognize. We needed to be a condition for this program. We additionally know that our goals around the decarbonization of our environment in 2050 are important to Canadians. They're important to the world. and we think that we need to put that as an overall Canadian goal. So as we think about the large enterprise financing, which is protecting jobs and protecting businesses, we want to make sure those businesses and those jobs are sustainable. And that's how we got to the conclusion that this was going to be an important part of that consideration.
Okay.
Ms. Sarowitz.
Thank you so much. My next question is about small businesses and the commercial rent assistance program that you have announced. I know that small businesses in my riding are waiting with eager anticipation for the application process to be open for that. I think they're both excited, and they have a bit of trepidation in terms of will their landlord sign on to it, and will they be able to qualify for it? What would be your message to small businesses around the commercial rental assistance program? Just maybe to put them at rest, and in terms of what's our purpose and how it is meant to be helpful.
Well, first of all, my message would be to landlords. I think this is a really important program that will be supportive of landlords, and I think they should take advantage of this. What we've seen for landlords is that many tenants cannot pay their rent. So if they have a commercial tenant that can't pay their rent, then they're much better off to get 75% of that rent, so 25% from the tenant and 50% guaranteed by the government, than to get potentially zero. So that is a huge advantage for landlords. For tenants, obviously, it's a huge advantage because they can decrease the rent payment because of the support from government. So that is my message. This is a program that is just being rolled out. Of course, there are always concerns with this. It won't work for every single situation. Rent is or the landlord commercial tenant relationship is a provincial jurisdiction. We are trying to help to make this work by stepping in through the mortgage system. We think that this can have a really big and important impact on small business in our country. And I would encourage landlords to be part of it. I would encourage commercial tenants and landlords to work together to get through this. And obviously, it'll be helpful for all of us if we remain, having those stores along our streets that are making our lives so vibrant when we get through this COVID-19 situation.
Very quickly, Julie.
I think I have one quick question, Minister. We're learning a lot through this pandemic. You had mentioned that 7.5 million Canadians have applied for CERB. We also know that many people have lost their jobs. And we've also learned through these committee meetings that there's actually a lot of jobs available, whether it's in agriculture or healthcare or even in construction. And my question to you is, how might this information, so the fact that there are actually jobs available, although we know people are, and we know a lot of people are out of jobs, how might this information impact our thinking and our approach to supports moving forward?
Minister?
I think, Julie, you're pointing out an important question that we need to answer is how do we move into the next phase? So the Prime Minister has talked about extending the wage subsidy. We think that is a step, but we're going to need to think about how that system and our emergency response benefit and our employment insurance system work together, creating the right incentives for people to get back to work, creating the right support so that businesses will bring people back on. So we're working through that now, and I think we all know what the goal is. The goal is to get people back to work, to get people into those jobs that are available, and to create new jobs as we move forward. That's what we're working towards.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both, and Minister, we will let you go. I just want to make one point, and it relates to the question on fraud. I think you gave a fairly clear answer. The answer hasn't, to be honest, hasn't been clear from the Minister or the Prime Minister on that issue. And I think it needs to be stated clearly that the government is not going to accept what is clearly fraud, but there is going to be a lot of errors out there. I have constituents who were on EI, went back to work, but because they automatically got enrolled in CERB, had no way of saying they were going back to work, they come home and they had a $2,000 check. Or a deposit. They called worried about what would happen. I actually had to write a letter to them saying that, look, this was an error on the government's part. Continue to work. Don't spend the $2,000, set it aside. And when things settle out here, that money can be paid back. So those kind of errors are going to happen in a fast moving system like this. But the government has to make it clear that we are not going to accept what is outright fraud, and that money will be hauled back in. I think somebody needs to be clear.
Let me just be clear on behalf of the government. I mean, we designed these programs with an attestation that allows people to get into the program based on some pretty clear facts. That was in order to facilitate getting money out to a very large number of Canadians in a rapid way. The fact that there are some people who are committing fraud, or that there are accidents, is a problem, and we're going to have to come back to those problems. For those people who are fraudulent, it's not acceptable. We are going to come back, and we are going to have to deal with that, and that will be dealt with. So I would encourage people to be fair and honest in their attestation, because the ramifications of not being are a problem for them afterwards.
Thank you. I think that's thank you much for clearing that up, and thank you again for Minister for appearing. You're here lots these days, and we do thank you for all the hard work that we know you're doing, and your staff right throughout the system.
Well, thank you, and thanks to everyone on here. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, great. Bye-bye. Then turning to, we'll go to officials. The speaking order to start with is Mr. Morantz and then Mr. McLeod. You, in the notice of meeting, all the officials' names were laid out from the Canada Revenue Agency, the Department of Finance, and the Department of Employment and Social Development. If you want to ask one specifically to an individual, that would be helpful. If you don't do that, whoever wants to answer can. I can't see everybody on my screen if you're putting up your hand, so you may have to push your button and yell at me. Marty, the floor is yours. 5-minute round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions will be addressed to the CRA officials, anyone who wants to take it, really, or all of them. This morning in the National Post, there was yet another report of a leaked, what you may call a guidance or a memo, directing the public service to approve CERB claims, even if someone had attested to the fact that they had either quit their job or been fired for misconduct. I just want to ask if you're aware of this guidance.
I expect Mr. Vermatten, who wants to take it?
Actually, hi. This is Cliff Grown. This is Cliff Grown from Service Canada.
Okay.
That article actually referenced guidance within Service Canada, so I'll gladly answer that question. So that guidance, it is accurate, but there's a few things that I would like to highlight. First, when people are applying for the CERB, whether it be on the CRA side or on the Service Canada side, they do need to complete an attestation, and there is a very clear attestation element there that confirms that the person has not quit their employment. Then, as part of the Service Canada application process, they go through the EI system, and there are a number of different questions that are in the EI system, and a number of them do tie to the question about whether someone has quit. Generally, under the EI program and as well under CERB, people generally cannot quit their employment. However, there are some situations in which people can legitimately quit their employment. An example would be someone who needed to, in order to take care of their child because of that situation. Other times, there are other situations where people can quit. We are recording those answers, and as part of after the payment integrity measures, we will be reviewing those types of responses and ensuring that only people that were qualified for the benefit actually are able to retain it.
All right, thank you. Do you have a copy of the guidance memo that was referred to in this morning's story?
That guidance is internal guidance that we have for our staff, yes.
Are you able to provide a copy of the guidance to the committee?
I don't believe that would be a problem. I will certainly follow up.
If you could, Mr. Groen, just send it to the clerk and we'll distribute it to committee members. We'll not take time away. You're a little looser in time now that it's not the minister. Marty, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as an aside, my understanding is that people who applied for CERB made disclosure that they had been fired or lost their jobs. At least according to the article, I take it you're saying that that is not the case. That because in the article basically makes the case that there's no way you could collect money back from somebody who actually disclosed this, that they were fired for cause or quit and then got paid. So I'm not sure how you would have a case to collect those monies back. I just mentioning that as a comment. Same question though with respect to the National Post report earlier this week about the no stop pay. Have you seen that guidance?
No stop pay? Do you want to expand a little, or do you know it, Mr. Groen?
Sure, certainly. I am very familiar with that article as well as that guidance.
Okay, do you have a copy of that guidance as well?
So it is very much just connected guidance. It is connected to how we treat and process applications. So we certainly do have that guidance. And again, as part of the response to the committee, I would be able to provide that guidance.
If you could provide that to the committee at post haste, I would appreciate it.
And certainly, and what I would like to highlight, however, is again, as the minister indicated, priority in delivering the CERB has been about being able to pay people very quickly.
Yeah.
If we had all the checks,
I have limited time, so I just don't want to go on to my next question. Was the guidance given by a cabinet minister?
No, it is internal guidance developed by departmental officials to facilitate the administration of the program, and is very much in line with the type of guidance we have to deliver our program.
So would you have the authority then within the public service to provide a guidance document that said that if somebody earned more than $1,000 on the CERB, that they would be eligible to receive the CERB?
So the program parameters of the CERB is that someone who if they need to attest again that they have not received more than $1,000.
Just the question, though, if you can answer the question. Do you have the
we'll take lots of time here, Marty, to clear this up. Go ahead, Mr. Groen.
So the parameters of the program is that people can earn up to $1,000, and they need to attest once again that they are not earning more than $1,000. Again, as part of our program integrity measures, we rely on people's attestation to be able to process the application. However, we do, both ourselves and CRA working together, do have and will continue to have, even after the CERB program is over, a number of different program integrity measures to be able to recoup any money that was not paid, that was paid to people that were in fact not eligible.
Go ahead, Marty.
Again, I think if people actually disclose to you the fact that they got fired, I don't know how you're ever going to, and you paid them, I don't know how you're ever going to collect that money back. But with respect to this issue, if you have the guidance to say you're going to pay people who have been red flagged for fraud, certainly you must have the guidance authority within the public service to pay people who are falling through all the cracks in these programs. Again, that's I think would be self-evident. I'm wondering why you wouldn't. Why would you pay people who don't deserve the money and not pay people who really do need it?
So the delivery of the program and the overall design of the program is not the purview of the public service. However, it is driven by the decisions that the government has made related to the design of the program. However, for the administration, we are responsible. Regarding your question about people who have indicated that they lost their job or they quit their job, again, we will be looking at those because there will be circumstances in which somebody may have legitimately quit their job and would be entitled. However, we also have evidence. We also are requiring them to complete an attestation, and therefore, if they do not meet the program criteria, like we do for all the programs we deliver, if people do not meet the program criteria, we do have the authority to be able to recover those funds.
Okay, we will have to leave it.
Mr. Chair, I'm really sorry. I have one quick one that won't require a verbal reply.
Go ahead.
The question just came from one of my colleagues. It says, our conservative members are receiving reports from our communities about confusion around import tariffs on PPE and the exact requirements they need to follow on bringing in this equipment. Can CRA officials please clarify the existence of import duties on PPE, and could they provide the committee with a written answer on the exact process for importing PPE?
So who wants to take that? We are substantially over on that round, but I think there was a lot of information come out there. Can anybody take the questions on tariffs on PPEs?
Just a written reply would be fine.
Gallivan? Did I see you move, Mr. Gallivan?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take that back and provide the written response on behalf of the agency.
Okay, if you could, Ted, thank you very much. All right, we'll now go to Mr. McLeod, who will be followed by Mr. St. Marie and Mr. Julian. Shorter rounds there, but Mr. McLeod. Michael? Your mic, Mike. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was hoping to get a question into the minister, but looks like we lost that opportunity.
Yeah.
I did want to ask a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to know from anybody that's presenting today on how we can get information as to the uptake that is happening for the different programs by region. It'd be interesting for me as an MP to know what the uptake is for different programs for the businesses that are applying for the North. I know everybody's working 100 miles an hour and 24 hours a day, but is there anybody that could provide me with that information? Because I'm kind of concerned that there may be pockets, maybe areas that are not utilizing the programs. I'm hearing in the North that a lot of businesses in our communities are not applying for the programs. I'm hearing that there is no banks in our communities, so a lot of times they can't go through any kind of institutions, financial institutions, and so there's a small uptake. Can anybody speak to that?
Does anybody want to raise their hand? If I can see you, or just push your mic and go ahead, say who you are. Mr. Vermetten?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Certainly, there is information that's being made available in a transparent way on a number of these programs in terms of the distribution by province. And so we at the CRA would have information on the programs that we're administering. I could probably say the same for each of the departments that is administering the program. So I don't know whether there is one comprehensive report on all of these programs, but certainly we would be willing to provide information on a by province and territory basis if the committee would like that.
Would that same kind of information be available for the Indigenous business support? Most of our Indigenous companies, or a lot of them, are large development corporations, and there starts to become challenges when you're dealing with companies that have over 20 people. For the most part, it's difficult for them, or up to now it was difficult for them to prove that there's been a reduction from revenue because they have so many branches and subsidiaries. So a lot of them were not able to access some of this program funding that was designated for Indigenous businesses. But I don't know if that's information I could get my hands on in a quick fashion.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, certainly we could provide you the information with the distribution with respect to the wage subsidy, which is a program we administer, and the same thing with the CERB. So, and we're certainly aware of that issue and trying to work with Indigenous businesses to ensure that if they're eligible, that they are able to, that they can apply.
Okay. I wanted to talk, I'm not sure if you can answer this again, but I wanted to talk about how the different regions are impacted by the COVID virus. And I think that the federal government's economic recovery approach has to reflect the existing regional distinctions. In the North, we've been very fortunate that, especially in terms of health impacts, that we've been, right now we have no cases, but we do have existing costs of living. We do have a large service area. We do have infrastructure gaps. And I'm very keen to know if the government is prepared to assist us in addressing some of these unique recovery challenges faced by all our northern territories. We've talked lots about greater flexibility and doing things different, especially with cost-sharing projects or allocating recovery programs focused on a base plus per capita formula. That's not something we do across the board with all departments. But is that something that should be considered in your opinion?
I don't know who that could go to. Maybe Susie McDonald, somebody from finance, or Mr. Leswick. Somebody want to take a stab at that? It relates to business and individuals in the North, which is, I've learned over the last 3 years, Michael, quite a different setup than what we understand down here and what you call the South. Susie, do you want to give that a go? I see your.
Perhaps I could start, and then perhaps my colleague Evelyn, who deals with infrastructure, might want to add something. I think certainly very aware of the concerns and the particular needs of the North and Northern communities, working closely with the territories to understand those needs. I think you're probably very aware that funding has been provided to Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut to support the COVID-19 health and social services preparations and response, and those funds are being delivered through CERNA and are expected to flow to the territories in the coming days. Continuing to discuss with the territories their needs, continue to provide funding, as you know, on a regular basis through the territorial funding formula, and making sure that that those funds continue to flow there during these difficult times. On the side of infrastructure, again, I think my colleague Evelyn is perhaps better placed to answer that.
Ms. Dancy, do you want to step in?
Sure, just simply to add appreciation for those thoughtful comments. I share the view that there's an awful lot of learning and collaboration that's come to the forefront in the past 2 months and will endure through our stabilization and recovery. And I think we will have a great interest in thinking about how infrastructure, whether it's current programming done better or stimulus related, in thinking about how those funds can be best applied towards our next normal, the way you've highlighted.
Thank you. We were over time. Some good thoughts there, Michael. We'll turn to Mr. St. Marie and Mr. Julian. We have time to go to 5-minute round, fellas. So, Gabriel, you're on.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My questions are directed at the Department of Employment. First question, those who receive EI and come to the end of their benefit period, the criteria for the CERB have a few drawbacks. For example, the date that you qualify for the CERB would be the week following the payment of your last EI payment. You can receive EI benefits and CERB benefits. You cannot receive them both for the same period. With that in mind, can people ask for the CERB 1 week later? And how does that fit in with the 14-day rule of no income? Can 2 people receive the CERB and EI benefits at the same time? Or is that impossible to receive, for example, for the 15th of March to the 14th of April, EI benefits when one is getting the CERB for that specific period? Thank you.
Who wants to take that on? Department of Employment and Social Development or CRA? Go ahead, Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. So to be clear, one cannot receive the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and an EI benefit for the same week. The government has adjusted the eligibility rules for the Emergency Response Benefit to allow people whose EI regular benefits claim has run out following the beginning of the COVID crisis, recognizing that in many cases, people are not able to get back to work.
Monsieur le Président, point d'ordre.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, if I may. Unfortunately, the interpreter has said that the quality of the sound isn't good enough to get faithful interpretation. I'm not sure whether one of the officials' colleagues could respond instead, so that there's a better sound quality.
Maybe, Mr. Ram, are you on the language on your Zoom channel there that you're speaking on? And just speak slowly, and we'll give it another attempt.
Okay, my apologies. I will begin again. So I wanted to confirm for the honourable member that there is no ability to receive the emergency response benefit and EI
Point d'ordre,
benefit.
Monsieur le Président.
Again, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the interpreter unfortunately has said that the quality of the sound is not good enough for interpretation.
Okay, is there anybody else can take that question? And maybe the technical people could look at Mr. Ram's setup there to see if we get a question a little later. Go to another question, and maybe we can come back to that one, Mr. St. Marie.
Oui.
Okay. Now, if it's not possible during this committee meeting, I'd like a written response to that question as soon as possible, please. Over a week ago, I wrote to the Department of Finance, who transferred on my letter to the Department of Employment. I got an acknowledgement of receipt that they'd get back to me, but I'm still waiting. My other questions are also directed at the Department of Employment. Now, the Bloc Québécois had said that students and individuals who are on the CERB, that they are able to earn $1,000 a month without losing the entire benefit. For example, for each additional dollar beyond $1,000, you take a 50% off. What is the state of affairs now?
Okay, somebody want to take a stab at that? I can't see everybody on the screen, so you may have to just push your button and step in. Somebody want to take that? Mr. Ram has indicated there by shaking of his head, Mr. St. Marie, that he will get a written answer to you on your first question. I don't know if he can give you a written answer on the second or not. Okay, he'll give us a written answer on both, Gabriel. Do you have another quick question?
Yes, indeed, for the Department of Employment. A student that receives the emergency benefit for the CERB, will they be able to apply for the CERB for students, or rather for the regular CERB, once the student emergency benefit is expired?
Bonjour.
Go ahead. Was that Mr. Groen?
Oui, bonjour.
Yeah, go ahead.
Je dois encore traiter.
Well, I think Mr. Ram would be a better place to answer that question, and he'll be able to answer in writing. My next question. I imagine I'll get a written response. A student on the Canada Student Emergency Benefit, can they work on a job from the Canada Summer Jobs Program if they earn less than $1,000 a month? Wayne, you said it was my last question, so I guess I'll get the written answers and I'll forward them on to... Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't see anyone up to answer that one. So there's about 4 questions there to be answered. If you could just send them to the clerk, that'd likely be faster, and he'll make sure they're in both languages and get them out as fast as we can. So we'll turn to Mr. Julian 5 minutes, but I'll give you the lineup for the next set of rounds. Mr. Cumming, Mr. Fraser, Mr. Cooper, Ms. Koutrakis, and did you have a question, Elizabeth May? Do you have a question? Put your hand up if you do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Okay. Mr. Julian, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll have some brief questions. I just want to make a comment to start. The idea of the CERB is to provide supports for people who don't have other means.
Yeah.
And
so I've got microphone.
Okay. We'll just Peter, can you hold a minute? And Mr. Ram, were you going to answer a question? Going to give it a try? No. Okay. Go ahead, Peter.
So for somebody who has to quit voluntarily their job because they don't have access to protective equipment, for example, they should qualify for the CERB. So I find it a bit rich to be talking about widespread fraud when what we have is, in many cases, people who are just not meeting the strict criteria. That is why the universal benefit that Jagmeet Singh proposed makes such good sense. And I hope the government continues to think about that, because that would eliminate a lot of the problems that we are seeing. But my question, first one to the Ministry of Finance, is the question I asked the minister. I did not get a reply. What is the budget for the LEAF? What are the funds that are projected to be spent, the loans that are projected to be outlined for the LEAF program?
Anybody? Go ahead, Ms. Dancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the LEAF is targeted to transactions of about $60 million or higher per firm. At this time, the government has not provided estimated ceiling or size of the program. The reason for that is that it is very uncertain in terms of the economic landscape and the financing requirements of the companies, who will have to assess whether this program meets their needs and whether they have indeed exhausted their other conventional lending sources. So that is something where we would anticipate being able to provide updates, but at this point, we don't have that estimate due to the current economic uncertainty.
Well, thank you. So you can't tell us whether it's 100 businesses that would be targeted or 1,000. You just can't say. Okay, then I'll go into my next question. The supplementary unemployment benefit, which is a program that we've raised numerous times. We have understood, and the finance minister has confirmed this, that there was a workaround being put into place that would allow supplementary unemployment benefits to be paid in addition to CERB benefits. Is there any update that the Ministry of Finance can provide us with on that?
Who wants to go? I'm looking for. Just push your button if you're coming in. Anybody from the Department of Finance or maybe one of the other departments? And go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Susie McDonald.
Okay.
I'll start, and my colleagues at ESDC may like to add. So part of putting in place the CERB is that the EI system is not functioning in the way that it was previously. The CERB is put in place, and it suspends some of the EI particularities. So the supplementary programs or sub-programs are not being part of that at the moment. Employers can continue to deposit or to put in place those sub-plans with ESDC so that their employees can benefit from them when EI comes back into play. So at the moment, that's a state of play.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you for that. My final question then is around the wage subsidy and the commercial rent relief program for small businesses. In both cases, the thresholds have been difficult for people to reach. And so on the wage subsidy, are there further changes planned for either the wage subsidy or commercial rent relief program that will allow more small businesses to access these programs?
Who wants to take a stab at that one?
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, I'll begin on the wage subsidy.
Yeah.
Well, I can't comment on any future changes the government might make. The wage subsidy was designed with flexibility in mind, and I think the committee is probably familiar with some elements of that flexibility, which were intended to recognize the particular challenges of all businesses, and particularly small businesses, in accessing the program. So for example, the use of cash or accrual accounting, the use of different reference periods, and so on. I think the minister did indicate that we will continue to look at these programs and make adjustments as necessary.
Anybody got anything else they want to add from any of the others there?
So on the wage subsidy, on the commercial rent program for small business.
This is Ms. Anderson. Okay, go ahead.
That program is not yet launched, and it is targeting the small businesses most significantly hit by the crisis. And I believe it will be very impactful for those small businesses and their landlords to bridge them through this period.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a supplementary okay there, Peter?
Oh, I've got tons of supplementary.
Okay,
if you want to give me another 5 minutes.
That wouldn't be a supplementary. That'd be a new question. We'll go to Mr. Cumming and then on to Mr. Fraser. Go ahead, Mr. Cumming. James.
Great, thank you so much. Can you tell me how many applications have you had under the EDC assistance program, and what are the value of the loan guarantees that have been granted so far?
That'd be to finance, I suspect, Mr. Marsland, or who? Do I see anybody there? A question on the loans through the money backed up for EDC. Go ahead, Ms. Gills.
Thank you. Could I ask, there's several BCAP programs, business credit availability programs that EDC is involved with. Which program in particular is your question about?
The original program that was announced, that the first program that was brought on, along with the other series of programs with BDC, that was providing guarantees on lines of credits.
Was that the $6.5 billion?
Yeah.
Ms. Gills is looking it up, I believe.
If you could give me a moment to look that up, unless
okay,
Leah, do you have that
you can look that up, and we'll come back to you. Go to your second question, James, and we'll come back to that one.
Glad to. How many applications have you received under the wage subsidy program?
Who wants to take that? Mr. Vermaten.
Yeah, thank you. So I have the statistics as of yesterday at 11:59. So that's end of day yesterday, and we've received just under 179,000 applications.
And I believe Ms. Gills has the answer now. Do you, Ms. Gills?
I'm sorry, not yet. I have received the numbers, but I'm just looking these ones up.
Okay, go ahead, James.
And then under the wage subsidy, how many applications have been rejected?
Mr. Vermaten?
Yeah, nice.
Oops, we lost you. We lost your video. Just push your mic. I do the same thing. Go ahead.
There we go. Okay. I don't have the exact number in front of me. I can tell you that it's quite small. So our primary focus is looking to make sure there's no fraudulent applications, to make sure that the application is in line with what we have in terms of file on the taxpayer. And so far, the rejection rate with respect to turning down applications is very low.
And have you had many applicants that have brought questions to you on the seasonal nature of their businesses, and they may not be eligible for the CEWS program?
Certainly, we've had lots of questions on all kinds of issues. I'd say with respect to the policy and the treatment of seasonal businesses, I'd turn you to the Department of Finance.
Anybody want to go from the Department of Finance?
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Marsland. Marcelin?
Well, we have had, as Mr. Vermaten said, a lot of interaction with stakeholders on this, and I guess what I'd say with respect to seasonal businesses, of course, there are many variations, but the program is designed to look back either in the average of the preceding months prior to the crisis, or the period in the preceding year, which would hopefully capture many seasonal businesses by reference to the same period in the preceding year. But we're happy to look at circumstances if there are others. We're happy to engage with all companies.
Go ahead, James.
On the rent subsidy program that's not out of the gate yet, have heard from both landlords and tenants about the difficulties with the program and the inflexibility of the program. Has there any consideration be given to, we've now determined that between two levels of government that they'll provide a 50% rent subsidy, and to allow the landlord and the tenant to negotiate whatever terms that they need to make sure that that business can remain open, and attest to that they've come to some kind of a conclusion. Strikes me that this would be a simple way to achieve the result that we want of tenants and landlords being able to enter into that arrangement.
Oh,
Leah,
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. So as you mentioned, it hasn't yet been fully launched, so we expect that to occur in the next week or two. It is very much, as I was mentioning, a program available for those small businesses most impacted by the crisis. And it, under the conditions of the program, the landlord must, or the property owner must provide at least a 75% rent reduction to the tenant. And that's not to say they could not provide more, so that indeed does provide that flexibility as appropriate given the circumstances of the small business tenant.
Okay, thank you. And I'll come back to Ms. Gills if she's got an answer yet. If she hasn't, we'll go to another questioner and come back to her. Ms. Gills? Okay, still haven't got it. Just one other thing I'd like to add on Mr. Cumming question, and it relates to the CEWS, the wage subsidy. I know the Prime Minister and others have mentioned that they're going to extend that program. But I can tell you, if they were allowed to take their 3-month period, it would make an unbelievable difference in the seasonal tourism industry right throughout the country, because a lot of the seasonal tourism industry is June, July, August. If they could apply the wage subsidy to those months, it'd make the difference between survival or not. I think, I know it's not your policy decision to make, but it's for information when any of you may have a discussion on the matter. Mr. Fraser, are you there, Sean?
I am, Mr. Chair. I'm having trouble. I was. Here we go. I am going to pass the time over to Ms. Koutrakis, but very quickly, just from finance, for the sake of clarity, on the protections against abuse in the CERB. I don't know why this has become a controversial issue whatsoever. Am I correct in my understanding that we made a decision to administer the program quickly and approve applications based on the attestation and conduct enforcement on the back end to the extent that fraud is detected? This does not seem like rocket science to me. Is that an accurate description of the enforcement mechanism?
That's how I understand it. Anybody else want to come in?
Sure. This is Cliff Brown from Service Canada. That's accurate. Yes.
Thank you very much. It's that simple. I'll pass my remaining time to Ms. Koutrakis.
Okay, Annie, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Minister Morneau for appearing before our committee today. I know his time is very precious, and to thank him and his team for all their hard work during this time. I also wanted to welcome and say hello again to our witnesses who have appeared before the Finance Committee, and it's nice to see everyone again. And thank you for all your hard work and dedicated work with your teams. My first question is to the Department of Finance. And my colleague, Mr. Frangiscatos, touched on this a little bit with his exchange with the minister earlier. And it's with regard to the gendered economic consequences. So in economic downturns can have gendered economic consequences that reflect in part the gender division of labor in the workforce. Women in Canada carry out a higher proportion of unpaid care work than men. And during a public health emergency such as this, care work may have unintended negative consequences on the mental and physical well-being of our caregivers, including an increased risk of falling ill. If an analysis has been conducted, what were your findings of this analysis, and what action can we expect from the Department of Finance based on these findings?
Who wants to take that? Department of Finance?
Well,
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll begin, and this may want to contribute. We do at the Department of Finance, in analysing all proposals, do a gender-based analysis. I'm sure the committee is aware that in each of the budgets we provide gender-based analysis, and indeed we do that for any proposal. So we have done that for each and every proposal that the department has worked on in the context of the current crisis. I think the question raises a very good point about the overall effect, and I think the department will want to look at each of those analyses, and as we look at we continue to look at the overall picture, ensure that we apply that gender-based analysis not only to the constituent parts but to the whole economic response plan.
Anybody else want to add anything further? Go back to you then, Annie. Ms. Katrakis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any other factors that you look at as well, such as age, ethnicity, and income when you're doing the analysis?
Andrew?
Well, yes, thank you for the question. Our analysis, our gender-based plus analysis, covers many aspects beyond gender. It's a comprehensive analysis. We also look at, of course, the environment. We do an environmental assessment on every measure. But we do try and do comprehensive analysis on all aspects. So to look at the implications of particular measures across the spectrum. But we specifically do, and we have a framework for doing gender-based analysis, which is gender-based plus analysis. It goes beyond just gender and looks at all aspects.
Thank you.
I hope that's responsive to the question.
Yes, thank you. I have a question for the CRA or the employment. An immediate measure was taken to allow businesses and individuals to defer income tax payments until August 31st. In the event that the pandemic is not fully over after August 31st, will this measure be extended?
CRA or somebody, I don't know whether you can answer that question. It's more policy question of the government, but Mr. Vermaten?
I just wanted to say I certainly cannot answer that question, but of course, as the economic situation evolves, I know the government is looking at all these things, and I'm sure they'll make a call if they need to.
Okay, and I hope somebody can answer this. So is the CRA predicting any challenges for individuals accessing their accountants or tax preparers during this time? And how will this impact the filing of income taxes this year for individuals experiencing these challenges and in order to avoid penalization?
Mr. Chair, maybe if I could come in.
Go ahead.
We've been working closely with CPA Canada almost daily by email and phone, and having teleconferences with members. Also, the CFIB, the Canadian Tax Foundation, l'APFF in Quebec, and so we're in pretty close consultation with the practitioner community. And they're kind of giving us feedback on what they're seeing, and that kind of allows us to kind of react before citizens or Canadians are adversely affected. So I would say we're pretty much in daily contact with those stakeholders, and they're being pretty clear about what they and their clients need.
Okay, thank you. We'll end that there, Ms. Katrakis. On to Mr. Cooper and then on to Elizabeth May. Mr. Cooper.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to follow up on the issue of fraud and abuse with respect to CERB and EI in the could the officials clarify just how many applications have been red flagged?
Sure, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Cliff Groen from Service Canada. So we do have an active program in which we proactively identify potential issues. What I can confirm is that, as many members would know, back at the beginning of April, we had identified situations which clients had mistakenly applied for both benefits, once on the CRA side, once on the Service Canada side. And at that time, we identified just over 200,000 clients who had made that mistake. Those individuals will be contacted by CRA in the coming months, and at which point the money will be recovered from those Canadians. We also do have active measures in which we are constantly reviewing and identifying potential issues which we pursue.
So again, following up on that, how many applications have been red flagged for fraud?
So I don't have a specific number aside from that 200 some odd thousand that had been identified as duplicate payments. I don't have any other specific number on specific applications that have been in language. We don't use the term red flag, so but we don't have any. I don't have any specific number there.
Well, let me just say that I find it very disturbing that applications are being processed not because the application was fraudulent and it got through because efforts were being made to get monies out. That's one thing. But it appears that applications are being processed even where there is evidence of fraud and abuse. And it may be tens of thousands of applications that are being processed where there is fraud and abuse. And for the minister or spokesperson of the minister to say, well, there are back-end safeguards, well, okay, that's fine. But why get rid of all front-end safeguards when there is evidence of fraud and abuse? Would you care to comment?
Certainly. When we were rolling out the program, we knew it was fundamental to be able to process applications very quickly. We could not deliver the program under the regular EI program, which has a number of different controls, both up front and on the back end. If we had done that, it would have meant Canadians would have been waiting months and months before they could have been paid. So we made a conscious and deliberate decision that in order to get money to the Canadians, the millions of Canadians that needed the benefit, we made a conscious decision to be able to streamline the process and leverage an attestation model. That said, I absolutely want to assure this committee that the integrity measures are strong and robust, and we do have means and mechanisms where we'll be able to address any potential fraud and abuse of the program. CRA and ourselves have lots of measures in place that we will continue to use going forward.
Okay.
Well, I'll give you your time. I just want to mention right here, Michael, if I could give you an example of what can happen. I got your clock stopped, and I mentioned it earlier with the minister. I had a construction company with 28 employees. Their workers were laid off while they put the proper washrooms on their construction sites to meet COVID-19 standards. They applied for EI and they were on EI. Because they went back to work just as the system was starting up, they automatically went to CERB without asking for it. It was an honest mistake by everyone. And so there was 28 people got CERB. They called me and I basically said to set the money aside, that it's an innocent mistake in this fast moving system. And so there's 28 right there. It's not fraud. It's just as the system was changing, EI rolled them over when they had no way of reporting that they were going back to work. So those things happen. That's an innocent example. There's probably others that are not. Floor is yours, Michael. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will turn to another topic, one that I had raised with the minister, and that is with respect to new businesses. I spoke with a business owner who invested $200,000 to open a salon just at the moment, but he was about to hire 4 people, start the business. COVID-19 happened. He doesn't qualify for the wage subsidy because he has no revenue decline. He doesn't qualify for the EDC or BDC loans because he has no revenue, and he doesn't qualify for CEBA because he doesn't have a payroll. And the minister, in answer to that question, indicated that this was very much something the government was attuned to and was ready to address. So I'd be very interested in what details the officials might be able to provide to reassure small business owners like the one that I'm talking about that help is finally on the way.
Who wants to take that? The minister did refer to it.
I can speak.
Okay,
to
go ahead.
Finance. So indeed, I mean, I would just reiterate what the minister said himself, that we are working hard on all these issues affecting small businesses and larger businesses. And we've taken a number of measures, continue to look at the impact they've been having and if there's any outstanding areas that need to be addressed. And this is very much on our minds, and we'll continue to evaluate and recalibrate as we go.
Okay, thank you. We'll end it there. We'll go to Ms. May, and I think Mr. Ram's system is working now. I'm not sure whether Gabriel is still on or not. We may have to go with written response yet. Gabriel, if you're on, click on and we'll go to you, and Mr. Ram can answer your questions. Ms. May.
How much time, Mr. Chair?
We'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks. I hope I won't use it all and then more members can ask questions. I'm not sure which of the officials I need to ask this. It's following up on this general conversation we've been having about getting things out quickly versus full controls and rigor. And what I wanted to suggest, because it's been missing in this conversation, is that the part of the reason for speed is flattening the curve. People won't stay home and stay away from work if they're not financially secure and don't see some aid coming. So there's a connection between getting CERB out quickly, getting it to everyone who needs it quickly, and not necessarily being concerned at the front end to make sure that everybody is quote unquote eligible. I wouldn't call it all fraud. I certainly agree with the chair. There's lots of circumstances here where there could be confusion. What I wanted to ask officials was to get a sense of if the instructions had been other than what they were. If instructions were, don't approve anyone till you've checked, you've gone back into their background, you know that this is someone who deserves the benefit, what would that have cost the government of Canada? Did we have the capacity to do that? We've heard from witnesses it would have significantly delayed when people got their money, for which I think there's a public health impact. This is a public policy issue at a very high level. I just wonder, is there any estimate of what it would have cost the government of Canada to have staff checking all the applications?
Mr. Vermatten, likely?
Sure, happy to respond from our perspective. But certainly, let me say that I did want to clarify that there's certainly upfront checks that are done. For example, we check the social insurance number, that it's valid, that the person is of legitimate age to be able to receive this, that there's no double dipping with respect to the various programs. So certainly there is upfront verification. And I think just wanted to assure you that it's not without that. With respect to creating a system where individuals would have to prove that, in fact, they have no income, I can't tell you what the cost is, but I can tell you it would be an extremely lengthy process to provide us the information that they don't have income, something very, in fact, difficult to prove in real time. So I think not only would it have been very costly, but I think most importantly, it would have delayed the ability to get the money out to individuals by weeks, if not months.
Ms. May, do you want a supplementary?
No, I'm fine. I just want to thank all of you for your hard work.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to Mr. Ram and Mr. St. Marie. Did you have the questions noted, Mr. Ram, or do you want Mr. St. Marie to go through them? Floor is yours, Mr. Ram.
Thank you. Actually, can I confirm that the translators can hear me and that everything is fine on the audio side?
Il semble que oui.
Good.
It would seem so indeed.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to respond. If Mr. Saint-Marie would not mind repeating his question, that would be very helpful to me.
Okay, if you could sum up your questions, Gabriel, and then we'll get an answer.
Oui, très bien, merci.
So the first question was regarding an individual who ends their EI benefit period of claims and then applies for CERB. Now, if it's 1 week later, what about this 14-day period with no income? Does that mean that an individual like that couldn't receive an EI benefit and the CERB at the same time? Or is it impossible to receive both in one of the official periods for the CERB, for example, mid-April to mid-May, mid-May to etc.?
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to be fully clear, you cannot receive the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and EI benefits in respect of the same period. So in the example that the honorable member mentioned, a person who is on an employment insurance claim and that claim comes to an end and they're unable to work can apply for the CERB and they will receive the CERB for a period following that for which they receive the EI benefit.
Okay, Gabriel, your other question?
Oui, je reviens.
Well, just let me come back to my first question. Now, there's a lot of details on the website, and there's a bit of inconsistency with the answer. I'm talking about the official CERB periods, 15th of March, 11th of April. If that individual ends their EI on the 16th of March, can that individual claim the CERB before the 16th of April, or do they have to, or the 11th of April rather, or do they have to wait till the 12th of April?
Mr. Ram?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. However, we will definitely study the transcript and we will get you a written response as soon as possible. I apologize.
Okay, that's not a problem. Go ahead. Do you want to ask your other question too, Gabriel? We'll get a written response to that one. Just so it's clear, as I understand it, Mr. Ram, a person runs out of their EI regular on the 16th. Gabriel's question was would they have to wait till the 12th of April before they could kick into CERB? Go ahead, Gabriel.
Oui. Well, let me ask my my next question. Now, the Bloc Québécois said that workers should be encouraged to the CERB or the student CERB by modelling it on the EI program. So, for example, if you get over $1,000, is there 50% knocked off for each additional dollar?
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so, as my colleagues have previously said, the CERB is a very simple program and does not feature many of the elements that we are regularly used to seeing in employment insurance. And this was a conscious policy choice that the government made due to the very large number of applications that were coming in. We would not have been able to efficiently process all of those claims using all of the existing EI rules and regulations. This includes what I think the member is referring to, which is a walking on claims provisions. These are provisions that exist in the EI system and allow people who are on claim to earn income and to not have the full benefits clawed back. These provisions do not exist under the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and we could not efficiently introduce them and still be able to process those claims. So under the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, if you earn, you can earn up
point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
Just on a point of order, the interpreter is saying that unfortunately the sound quality still isn't quite good enough.
Okay, it's really tough in the not your fault, Mr. Ram. Okay. It's really tough in the translation booths. Maybe where we'll go on this, if you can look at the transcript and provide the clerk with some answers, we we should be all right. The system works imperfectly, if I could put it that way. I have difficulty seeing all the people on my screen myself. Maybe should work on a bigger screen. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. Sorry, Ms. Gills, near forgot about you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to circle back to confirm that we are still awaiting the information which will be available following some of the program adjustments that have been made to the EDC new loan guarantee for SMEs. As well, we are still awaiting information to flow in from the financial institutions that EDC and BDC are partnering with to deliver these programs. So as soon as that information is available, we'll make sure that it is shared with the committee.
Okay, that relates to Mr. Cummings' question. As soon as you get that, go ahead, James.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, to be clear, so the program was announced originally in March, and I'm looking for up until this date, because it's been expanded now. So they've expanded the program. So it's the EDC loan, the BPAC loan guarantee program. What has been provided for loan guarantees, both in number and in size? Now, and that pre-expansion. So up until now, what I'm really looking for, what's the uptick on that program? Because it was supposed to be a loan guarantee program that would provide that liquidity to small and medium-sized businesses.
Okay, then Ms. Gills can try and find that information, provide it to the clerk as well when it is available, and we'll see that committee gets it. So with that, I do want to sincerely thank the witnesses. I know these are fast-moving times, fast-moving programs, and everybody is doing the best they can do. So a sincere thank you on behalf of the committee for appearing and answering our questions as best you can today. We look forward to the information that will come to the clerk, and we'll get that out to members on the committee. And for committee members, we will see you for 2 panels on Tuesday coming. Have a good Victoria weekend for those that manage to get some time off. That won't be a lot of people. Okay, thank you. With that, meeting adjourned. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
Stay well, stay safe.
Bon weekend.